Welcome to The Insider, the official podcast for the City of Murfreesboro. I'm Mike Browning. Thanks for joining us. Our topic today is the Municipal Airport here in Murfreesboro, which has seen a lot of changes over the years, and including more to come. And we're going to talk to Chad Gehrke, who is the director of the Municipal Airport, and also Ryan Hulsey, who is the manager of the airport. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for having us.
One of the big topics, of course, that people know about right now is a new tower.
Yes.
So for years, Murfreesboro did not have a tower, and now they call it the contract tower with the FAA.
Yes.
Where are we at in the process for that?
We're really in the beginning stages of the design of that tower. In 2 weeks, we're going to be working with the FAA here in Murfreesboro, where they will be looking and determining the site of the tower and then also the height, which is also an important part of that. But exciting time where we'll really have an idea. We can point a finger to where it's going to be and then how tall, because how tall matters how expensive the tower is, also how much that's going to cost to build.
So what can you say about the siting part of it? Like, what are the things that they look at for that?
It's all by sight for those controllers that will be working in the tower to be able to see both ends of the runway and certain parts of the taxiway system that we have there at the airport, and then also be able to see the pattern, both sides of the runway in the airspace where the planes are flying. So they have to have a very open area with no obstacles to be able to see where the aircraft are moving. So things like we'll be looking at it in daylight, we'll be looking at it at night. So things like, for example, we're fighting the Parks and Recreation people. We have the Starplex there at McKnight Park. Will those lights be a problem with visibility for the controllers, things like that? We have a rotating beacon on the airport that flashes a white and green light. Well, at night, will that be flashing into the cab? Do we have to relocate that to the tower? Things like that we're going to be looking at and studying, which we can do virtually, which is really cool.
So you worked with consultants, and the consultants determined through studies that this was necessary.
Right. And it really started several years ago as we were looking at the number of operations that we were experiencing. We really didn't have a tool by which to understand or collect that data until VirTower came along, and we were able to actually collect that data to see how many landings, how many takeoffs we had, and how many touch and goes, because we're very heavy right now on flight training. And that really helped. We brought in a consultant really to assist us with capacity and safety issues on the runway. We had a lot of a tremendous growth on flight training. As you know, we have a shortage of pilots. We also have a shortage of air traffic controllers. And with MTSU having an aerospace program, how do we adjust and deal with that growth, that demand for pilots? And that's not just a Murfreesboro issue. That's an issue across the country.
How much does a tower like the one you're planning here cost, and then who pays for that?
The federal government, we're working with the federal and state government on this program, and typically this is a federal contract tower, so very similar to what you see at the Smyrna Airport. The federal government assists with the cost of many of the studies that goes into that, environmental things like that, but then the big ticket item is the cost of building the tower. And they also cover the cost of the air traffic controllers and their salaries. The city's responsibility is that tower then becomes a facility, a building, just like the other buildings at the airport, so we'd have to maintain that and keep up with the equipment.
So the FAA must have a vested interest in having a tower here due to the fact that you have the Smyrna Airport that you mentioned, the International Airport in Nashville.
Yes.
And while some people might think, well, Murfreesboro's big enough, it could have a bigger airport, with the International Airport nearby, that's not so much necessary.
Well, it is. Just like we have seen tremendous growth in Murfreesboro, we all know that Nashville's had tremendous growth too. And if you've gone in through BNA, Nashville International Airport, you can really see the growth just in the parking lots alone. But their airspace is growing, and they're doing a study right now where their airspace will be over and beyond Murfreesboro. So now you're really talking about a system, and to be able to bring in pilots into the Nashville area, metro Nashville area, and come in through that airspace to come into Murfreesboro, a control tower will assist in enhancing safety, creating a less stressful situation for those pilots. So that's a major portion of our proposal to the FAA is what's happening in Nashville and around us.
So this all has to be coordinated appropriately.
Yes.
When can we expect the tower to actually be operating?
I would look in 2028, 2029 for it to be operational. So we have a 5-year window that once you're accepted into the federal contract tower program, you have about a 5-year period in which you need to be at least under construction. And I think that's where we will be.
Ryan, as the manager of the airport, a lot of people don't realize that there are agreements and partnerships that the airport has with commercial entities. Explain some of that and why that's important.
So one of the recent ones we just did was we just extended the lease agreement with Murfreesboro Aviation. They're one of our local corporate customers. They've been around for many years now. They offer aircraft maintenance services as well as their own flight school for students that want to operate outside of MTSU's program or just get their own license just independently. And so the reason we had to extend their lease was because they have their own contracts and obligations they have to meet. They have their own investments they need to make in their own company and their procedures, and they need to be able to show that they're here for the long term. And we don't see them going anywhere anytime soon, but they also provide a lot of critical services for the airport as a whole. We have an agreement with them for aircraft recovery. So if there's an incident on the runway and they've blown a tire and they're stuck on the pavement, they're the ones we call to help get that airplane off the runway. And they also provide other services for us, like ground power units for the larger corporate jets that need some electricity while the engines are turned off. So we have that working partnership with them as well.
So this is an economic development impact. I mean, they have jobs and they facilitate a lot of financing in and out in terms of other businesses that bring planes in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was 2019, TDOT Aeronautics did a statewide study on sort of the economic impacts of each airport. And that was pre-COVID, so those numbers are actually actively getting updated right now. But in 2019, we had about an $8 million economic impact just on the local Murfreesboro area from all the business and activities that we bring through. I talk about all the time when we were taking care of what's the name
Costco.
of it? Costco, thank you. When they were coming here and negotiating with the city, their executives were coming in on their corporate jet, and we were their first exposure to our community.
And that's one thing that is important. It is a gateway to the community for a lot of companies, and these are influential people that are coming through. Chad, you alluded to it about the touch and goes, but flight safety and airport safety has been a major priority over the last several years, and we'll talk about it later about the safety award. But the FAA Southern Region General Aviation Safety Award was awarded to Murfreesboro, and that had to do with a lot of consulting work that you did to try to get to that point. What were some of the things that we should know about?
It was really the first time that a consultant who was looking at conducting a runway capacity and safety study also was able to use a data counter, which was collecting the data using ADS-B, kind of the replacement for radar on aircraft, and using that data which the VERTOWER system was creating, and putting that into standard operating procedures. So looking at that data, collecting all that data, and our consultant is a real spreadsheet geek, so we could take all that data and manipulate it and gather information out of it to create this standard operating procedures, which ended up really addressing a lot of concerns that our community had, our neighbors had, and creating some. We can't control the airspace, but we can certainly come up with some procedures that, if we all agree to operate under, can really help, I think, the capacity of the airspace, our pattern, and that leads to safety as well. So that was really the first time that the FAA had seen the combination of data counters and consultants using all those tools together to come up with a really meaningful document that has helped us really through the years.
If you look at before that study was conducted, and now, and the implementation of these new operating procedures, what has changed?
Time during the mornings as to what type of operations are occurring. For example, prior to the standard operating procedures, the students were trying to get in as much flying as they could whenever, and reasonably so. But if we are a good neighbor, if we could put off some of that where they're just staying in the pattern till a reasonable hour, 7 o'clock in the morning on weekdays, 8 a.m. on weekends and holidays, that helps. How they depart out of the airport, instead of just hanging it over the community, if we could get them to gain altitude and then make that turnout, it makes a big difference. And as soon as that started to work, we haven't cut back on MTSU's operations have cut back about 18% over the last 4 years, but the number of operations still at our airport continues to grow. And so those standard operating procedures have been we get less complaints from our neighbors and less concerns from other pilots that are coming into the area and trying to land or try to take off. So they're effective, and it took a while to get them in place, but so far it's been very positive. Now the tower is that next step, because there's still some things in the pattern that we'd like to address, and the cost-benefit analysis puts us in position to be a part of this program to build the tower. So it's the next step to this.
MTSU's Aerospace Department is in the process of relocating to Shelbyville, which is a good thing for Shelbyville and for Murfreesboro's airport.
Yes.
Where are we at in the process for that?
They're under construction at the Shelbyville Airport, and it's my understanding that somewhere in the spring or summer of 2028 is when they will move the rest of their fleet down to Shelbyville. Right now, they only moved 5 aircraft from Murfreesboro down there. There were other aircraft that have since come to Shelbyville, but we've only lost 5. So there's still 30-plus aircraft that are still doing their flight training here at Murfreesboro.
Should we expect to continue to see MTSU planes and flights out of Murfreesboro even after that relocation?
Yes, and I think that's something that I've shared with our neighbors is an expectation. Just because MTSU is moving the aerospace department does not mean that we'll never see little white diamonds flying in the air. Part of that standard operating procedure, a huge part of that was for MTSU to dispatch their aircraft to other surrounding airports. And so that's what we're seeing is part of the decrease in the traffic at Murfreesboro is instead of them sitting in our pattern and doing all that training here in Murfreesboro, they're going out to the other airports, which is a really good thing. And so when they're in Shelbyville, they'll be still coming to Murfreesboro like they do all the other airports in the area. They've got over 1,400 students in the aerospace program.
That's a large department.
It's one of the largest departments now on that campus. So they make quite an impact. And, the difference between a flight lab and a chemistry lab is the flight lab is actually done in the real world, not in a controlled little lab situation. So these students that are learning to fly are flying with actual pilots and actually flying in the industry. So it takes a lot of coordination to have flight training and the rest of the flight world working together. It's a little different scenario. It has an impact on the community and it has an impact on the system. And part of our discussions with the Nashville and the FAA about the new Class B airspace over Nashville is the amount of flight training that happens in this corner of the new airspace. And how
Which
are
we
gonna
need
do
flight
it?
training, right?
Absolutely.
It's necessary.
That's how we get to Florida and to different places across the country for vacation and business and stuff like that are these pilots. So it's very important, and it's an important part of Murfreesboro. It's an important part of our economy.
What will be the impact on the economy when MTSU leaves?
So really, we're kind of dedicated right now to flight training as far as the number of operations that we have. We're very heavy on that. As that leaves, what we're seeing is as MTSU's operations decrease, others are coming into Murfreesboro and into the Murfreesboro Airport.
So it's almost like a natural organic process.
Yes. So what the Airport Commission is doing, and we're working with City Council, is you'll see some of that construction on the north end, and that is a conscious effort to replace some of that revenue. So we're going to go from flight training maybe more to more corporate type activity and charter aircraft companies that have their own aircraft that they use, much like TDK does with their aircraft that they go across the country to various construction sites that they have going on. So that's what you're going to see, and that revenue will easily make up for what we will lose from MTSU.
I'm glad you mentioned construction. What is that construction on the north end?
So what you're seeing is all the underground work, really, the utilities, stormwater.
Okay.
The great thing about the soccer fields is they're flat, and the bad thing about the soccer fields is they're flat. So we had to really create a lot of stormwater drainage. You'll see some of that work continue through the summer, but then that is really preparing for taxiways and some areas for future hangars to be built. And we're about to go out to bid for a corporate hangar, which will have some office space, but really trying to attract those businesses that have again, some of the similar small jets and turboprop aircraft that you see in and out of there, attracting a place for them. The demand is high. We're trying to address that need.
So the construction's not about extending the runway. The runway is the length that it is, and it's going to stay that way.
Exactly. We have another airport layout plan coming in 2027, 2028. We look at all of our safety parameters, anything that the FAA looks at. We'll look at the runway again. Again, we're going through a major change. The airport, the Murfreesboro Airport, what it was 30 years ago is not what it is today. So we're going to have to look at that where we were flight training, predominantly MTSU and those small aircraft. That's the use of that runway. Will that change at all in the future? The airports reflect how that, the community that they serve. We're in a growing community. The airport has certainly reflected the growth of Murfreesboro.
So in addition to that project, maybe we should talk about some of the other projects, Ryan, and the cost involved and how they're funded and that kind of thing. So can you address that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the cost of construction is going up for everybody, and aviation is no different. If anything, it's a little more challenging because there's a lot of extra parameters and specifications that have to be met for aviation projects. But, as far as funding, aviation is really unique in that it is majority funded by its user fees. So every time I sell fuel or every time we rent, revenue that is coming into the airport typically stays at the airport and is used to cover our operational costs, but also our capital improvement costs. So, part of that $8 million economic impact is us using these monies that are coming in to grow the airport and expand our community as a whole. And so, we're really fortunate to have a city that supports its airport growth and helps us, float that dollar until we can make it back. And it is all funded through those user fees. So we get grants from the states and the federal government to help pay for these projects. And again, that whole pot of money is funded through user fees as well.
We've been hearing in the news a lot about jet fuel prices because of the Iran war. So I assume prices are going up over there. And I mean, is it the same type of fuel?
So we have two different types of fuel that we sell. MTSU is our primarily consumer of avgas, which is more like a high-octane gasoline. It's got a little bit of lead in it. And then we have jet fuel, which is very similar to like diesel and kerosene. And that's what a lot of those corporate jets that you see, those big, loud turboprops, that's what they drink. And yes, the cost of that has gone up just as much as you see it at the pump. This is some of the most expensive fuel I've ever had to price. I do my best to make the numbers conservative to serve the community. You still gotta make sure we hit our bottom line though.
Do you foresee any issues of being able to get the fuel? Are there any shortages?
No, we have a very good partnership with a company called Titan Aviation Fuels. They are the industry standard when it comes to safe delivery of fuel, and they have a very good system in place to make sure we always stay supplied.
Let's go back to the topic of drainage. It's an assumption that we make, of course, that you don't want water on the runway for planes. And you had alluded to it earlier about the flat surface in that location and then having to run that water to what is involved now in trying to get the water to the places it should go and away from the runway?
Sure, and it's the airport is around 230 some acres on the north side of the city, and there's a number of different neighborhoods and all that drain in through into or through the airport.
And
So
some
it's-
sinkholes around
and
the
sinkholes
area.
and things like that. And we have some drainage basins, the 231 drainage basin that you see off of Memorial and Airport Road. There's also one off of Gehrke. And really through time, just like with all city projects, we try to do our best and are required to control not only the quantity of drainage coming off of our properties, but also the quality control of that stormwater to make sure that it isn't full of debris and things like that. So that's part of what we're doing. Fortunately, a lot of that infrastructure is already in place. We just have to enhance it and create some new drainage areas for quality control for this further development in the old soccer field area of McKnight Park.
So are you working with the engineering department, stormwater department to do
Yes,
that?
yes, and our consultants provide the design and things like that for them, which this summer, part of our city stormwater enhancement program will be making those improvements.
And a popular event every year is the Steam Fest. It's been 4 years now, I think, Ryan. A lot of people come out for that, and I know you're involved in helping coordinate and get all that together and get the people out there. But tell us a little bit about the success of that and what you like about it.
Well, it was born out of wanting to improve our academic relations with some of the grade school kids. We used to have tours all the time at the airport, and because of our growth and the new terminal building, things are a little more divided and not so tour friendly for kids. So we partnered up with the Discovery Center. They do a statewide Steam Fest, is what they call it, and I pulled from that to create this little local event at the airport to increase that engagement. We weren't able to accommodate tours anymore, so we pick a day now where we close off the ramp, invite all sorts of aircraft to come in and engage the community as a whole, not just school students, but anybody that wants to show up.
And people get to actually sit in the seats of these aircraft and see them firsthand, which is an opportunity that many people didn't get before this opportunity, right?
Yeah, we're getting ready for our 5th annual, October 17th. We do it. It's always in October. I remember the first year we get sponsorship dollars to help cover our costs on this. So our sponsors, we bought 300 hot dogs in the first year, and I could have sworn I was going to be eating hot dogs for months. We ran out of food very quickly that first year. It was immensely successful.
You had more people than you even imagined.
I think it was 1,300.
Yeah.
I think so. 300 hot dogs did not go very far.
Right.
And every year it gets a little bit more and more. I think we got pretty close to 2,000 last year, and we continue to see that growth. But yes, as you mentioned, everyone that brings their airplane, the 101st is a big participant, but they let the kids sit in the seats, touch the controls, push the buttons, do all the things to really engage them. MTSU participates. They open up the hangar that they teach all their maintenance students in, so you get to come in and see different types of engines and different states of disrepair. And then we involve other levels of the community as well. Police and fire show up and give the kids a good show. And coming up in June on the 13th, we actually EAA, which is a local aviation organization, they are doing what they call their Young Eagles event.
Nice.
And it's where pilots volunteer their time, their money, their aircraft to actually take kids up in the air, fly them around the pattern for a little bit, come back down, and it's completely free.
I assume, Chad, that having this new terminal has added to the allure and the success of events like this.
Yeah.
Give us an assessment of how that has gone, and has it performed the way you wanted it to? And we'll talk about the event center and everything.
I think it really has exceeded what I thought would come out of that. I really saw it as the business center, the conference room, and now even the team space, and just the lobby as a whole as a great place for meetings and for our city meetings and things like that. But it's really become a part of our community. We've had election parties, we've had birthday parties, retirement parties, celebrations of life. Different groups are coming in and out of that airport, and they have a new perspective of what is happening at our general aviation airport. I think everybody understands what happens at our air carrier airports with the airlines. General aviation is still a little mystery as to what happens out there, but they see it. There's a great view. And all of a sudden, the airport is a part of the community where it was a role we never had. To have city council there once a month is such a tremendous opportunity for our elected officials and our people who attend those meetings to see what one of our city facilities is doing and what an important part of that is to our business community.
Well, I have to say it's a very professional operation from the technical side of being able to give presentations, but also from the catering side as well. It's great to be able to see something like that for people to utilize, and I assume that if people want to take part, if they want to have a meeting, there's a number to call or a way to get a hold of you, right?
Yes, and it's on our city website, and it's quite affordable, and we have a great staff. We could not do it without our staff doing it. Just for example, this week, we've had several events overnight. We flipped it from a planning commission meeting to some sort of nursing banquet is going on tonight. So it takes a lot of work to clean up and flip those rooms to the different uses, the different tables, different chairs. So Kim Fan, April Robinson, Chris McDaniel, and some of those are working every day, every night, late into the night to clean up those rooms, get them ready for whatever the next event or next meeting is. And it's a pleasure that we get to do that and be a part of the community the way we can through the use of those facilities.
I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball here maybe, but do you foresee the opportunity for a hotel at some point closer to the airport? Have you heard anybody talk about that?
We haven't, and I'm looking forward, though, to some of the talk of the hotels being here near the square. I think that would be a great opportunity. Usually when people fly in, and some of the corporate pilots that are here overnight, they don't ask to go to the chain restaurants. They ask to go to the local restaurants. Give me local flavor. And so the square, some of those restaurants that are on the square, it's such a beautiful area. That's where we recommend them go to. If that could be where their hotels are, real close to the airport.
It's still close, right?
Yeah, it'd be wonderful. So they still see a great deal of Murfreesboro as they travel out to Medical Center Parkway and to some of those hotels and restaurants that they have. But I'm looking forward to that in the future.
We've talked about how the control tower will be coming in like 2028. That's going to be a major addition and a big feature that people will recognize. Are there other things, and both of you can address this, being planned that we should maybe know about that you can give us a little tease on?
Well, the tower is going to be a big thing. This is a real big period of change with MTSU, the tower, some corporate hangars. I think that's going to be the key as to we've got about 27 acres there on that north end of the airport, and that is the mystery. We're setting up the plate, if you will, the blank space there, so that we can grow that corporate level. There's also going to be some T hangars that will be in there for the individual aircraft owner. So that will be a key to our revenue producing and servicing our community. I really would like to see some charter. We've got a lot of people in Murfreesboro that travel that would like to go down to Florida quickly instead of having to drive 8-10 hours and get stuck on 25 and 75 and all that.
Or even down to the beach.
Or down to the beach, exactly, the 30A area. And there's a real market for that. And if we could create that space, those hangars, that creates those jobs. And I think really provides another service here, not just for vacationers, but for people that want to do business too, that are needing to travel to other cities. When you travel by the airlines, you're subject to their schedule. When you can charter, if you can, you're buying time. You're buying your time to get from one place to the other. So if we can provide that service, I think that'll be a real plus for Murfreesboro.
So if you're listening, we'd like to have a charter at some point.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Anything to add, Ryan?
I'm really excited about that North End development. We've been working with our consultants and have developed like a 10-year plan to really maximize that space and bring the biggest benefit to the community. So there's so much opportunity. If you build it, they will come, but it's also a blank slate of an infrastructure that we're setting up for so many opportunities to come.
All right. Well, Chad Gehrke, Airport Director, and Ryan Hulsey, Airport Manager, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being on the Insider.
Yeah.
Okay. We've been discussing the Murfreesboro Airport, including plans for the new control tower coming in 2028. This podcast originated from City Hall. Thanks for joining us on our many platforms, including Podbeam and YouTube. Our producer is Michael Nevels. You've been listening to The Insider, the official podcast for the City of Murfreesboro. I'm Mike Browning. Thanks for joining us.